She's been sitting in that prison cell, carrying the weight of crimes she didn't commit. Framed, betrayed, and systematically dismantled by one of the most calculated villains the Dales has ever seen. Moira Dingle has fought tooth and nail to make anyone listen, but the evidence has been piling up against her at every turn. And just when it seemed like all hope was truly gone, just when the walls were closing in and her family was falling apart around her, something extraordinary is about to happen. Because it turns out Celia Daniels may have left something behind. Something that changes everything. And tonight's episode of Emmerdale could be the turning point that fans have been desperately waiting for. Welcome back to Emmerdale Echoes, your go-to place for all the latest Emmerdale drama, spoilers, episode breakdowns, and the storyline updates that are keeping the whole fandom talking. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications, because if tonight's episode is anything to go by, you are not going to want to miss a single moment of what's coming. We are in the thick of one of the most emotionally devastating and gripping storylines this show has delivered in years, and this Friday, the 3rd of April 2026, looks set to deliver a turning point that could reshape everything we think we know. So let's get into it, because Emmerdale tonight is not holding back. For anyone who needs a bit of context before we dive into Friday's explosive developments, let's take a moment to look at how we got here, because the road to this point has been nothing short of extraordinary. Celia Daniels arrived in the village presenting herself as a hard-nosed but straightforward farmer, a no-nonsense woman who rubbed people up the wrong way but seemed, on the surface, like someone who was just difficult rather than dangerous. But it quickly became clear that Celia was something far more sinister. Alongside her son Ray, she had been running a brutal exploitation ring, a county lines drug operation intertwined with a modern slavery network, hiding forced workers in a field right beside Butler's farm. The victims included Bear, who endured unimaginable suffering under their control, and a young woman named Anya, whose tragic death in that field set off a chain of events that would eventually spiral into murder charges, for entirely the wrong person. Celia had been working against Moira for some time. After initially approaching Moira with a business offer and ultimately coming clean that she had been working for Joe Tate to undermine her, Celia offered Moira an alliance, suggesting the two women team up against Joe, using her inside knowledge of how the Tates operated. Moira, desperate and vulnerable, chose to trust her. And that was precisely the mistake Celia had been counting on. When Moira declined to invest in Celia's turkey business, Celia refused to accept that and instead forged Moira's signature on invoices for huge orders, dragging Moira's name into financial dealings she knew nothing about. But the forged invoices were just the beginning. Celia was building a meticulous, calculated frame, a web of false evidence designed to make it look as though Moira was the one behind the entire criminal operation. And when both Celia and Anya's bodies were discovered buried on Moira's property, the trap snapped completely shut. Moira was arrested and charged with the double murder of both Celia and Anya, despite insisting throughout her police interview that she had been set up by Celia herself. With the proof stacking up and poor Moira's fate appearing sealed, Kane watched helplessly as she was led away to prison, having been formally charged with murdering both women. And that was all happening at the same time that Kane received his devastating cancer diagnosis, a blow that made the whole situation feel utterly unbearable for the Dingle family. With Ray and Celia both dead, there seemed to be nobody left who could prove what Moira was saying was the truth. The case against her looked watertight, even if fans at home have been pointing out the enormous plot holes left by an investigation that seemed to close its eyes to some very obvious evidence. But now, as we arrive at Friday the 3rd of April, the story is shifting. And it's shifting in a direction that nobody quite saw coming. Not like this. The week of the 29th of March to the 3rd of April has already been extraordinary. Relations between the Tates and the Dingles have deteriorated even further after a despicable act from Joe brings fresh heartache to Wishing Well Cottage. Moira, still behind bars, made the agonizing decision to invite Kim Tate to visit her in prison, where she reluctantly agreed to sell her share of Butler's farm, the place she has poured her heart and soul into for years, the farm where her late daughter Holly is buried. Kim was sympathetic during that meeting and assured Moira that the family would always have access to Holly's grave. But Kim hadn't factored Joe into that promise. That promise, and Joe's casual, brutal disregard for it, has now ignited something in Moira that even a prison cell cannot contain. And it has forced the hand of people around her who have been sitting on information they perhaps should have come forward with long ago. This is where tonight's twist comes in. And it is a big one. Sources close to the production and early ITVX release viewers are buzzing about what happens in Friday's episode. Because it appears that Celia Daniels, even in death, is not quite finished with Emmerdale. Hidden amongst the chaos of Celia's criminal empire, evidence has begun to surface. Evidence that tells a very different story to the one DS Walsh has been so aggressively pursuing. Documents, recordings, materials tied to Celia's operation that Celia herself may have used as leverage. Insurance policies against the very people she feared most. And tonight, that material lands in front of someone who finally understands what it means. Whether it's a document that survived the dismantling of Celia's operation, or a recording that Celia made without realizing it would outlast her. The nature of what surfaces is the kind of thing that defense lawyers dream about. It is precisely the kind of evidence that D.S. Carter, who had previously assured Marlon that the police knew what Ray and Celia were up to but were trying to gather more evidence, would have leapt on immediately if she had ever been allowed to compare notes with D.S. Walsh. The irony is almost suffocating. The evidence was always there. The truth was always reachable. And it may have taken the loss of Butler's farm, a prison sentence, and a grief-stricken family for it to finally come to light. The dramatic weight of tonight's episode comes not just from what is discovered, but from who acts on it, and how fast. Because with Joe making his latest move against the Dingle family and the farm situation worsening by the day, the window to turn this around is not wide open. It's a crack in the door, and someone has to throw themselves at it before it closes. Online, Emmerdale fans have been absolutely electric this week. Social media has been awash with theories, predictions, and passionate defenses of Moira Dingle ever since her arrest. And the build-up to tonight's episode has only intensified the conversation. Fans have been working overtime to identify the holes in Moira's case, with one popular suggestion being that if the police checked the planted documents for fingerprints, Moira would be in the clear, since none of her prints would be on them. Others have been loudly calling for Robert to come forward and tell the truth about his role in the evidence planting, with many arguing that protecting Victoria simply isn't worth allowing an innocent woman to rot in prison. Natalie J. Rob has been teasing that things will heat up significantly between Moira and Joe as she fights to prove her innocence, and she's given fans hope by speaking about the mutual respect Moira and Kim showed during their prison meeting, hinting at the possibility of a very unexpected alliance forming. The internet has run with that theory, and many viewers are now predicting that Kim Tate, who was once Moira's adversary, could actually be the one to tip the scales in her favor against Joe. The hashtag Moira Deserves Better has been trending among the British soap community, and the passion fans feel for this storyline is palpable. After months of watching an intelligent, fiercely strong woman be systematically destroyed by a web of lies, the audience is ready, desperate, even for justice. So what does all of this mean going forward? If tonight's twist delivers what it appears to promise, the implications are enormous. Not just for Moira, but for virtually everyone connected to this storyline. Celia's actress Jay Griffiths confirmed her exit from Emmerdale, revealing that she always knew the arc was finite and that her final scenes had already been filmed, describing Emmerdale as a joy to work on and pointing to a dramatic but definitive conclusion to Celia's storyline. The question has always been, what form does that conclusion take? Tonight may be the answer, or at least the beginning of one. Because Celia's downfall, even posthumous, needs to be complete. It needs to reach every person she hurt. And Moira, locked in a cell for crimes she didn't commit, represents the most urgent piece of unfinished business in that villain's legacy. For the Dingle family, the stakes could not be higher. Kane and the rest of the clan have been trying to concoct a plan to clear Moira's name, but it's been clear that it would be easier said than done. And with Kane battling his cancer diagnosis at the same time, the emotional toll on this family has reached breaking point. A breakthrough tonight would mean everything, not just legally, but personally. Moira getting out of that prison is about more than freedom. It's about family. It's about Kane not having to face his illness without her. It's about the children. It's about Holly's grave and what it means to the people who loved her. Meanwhile, Joe Tate's position is becoming increasingly precarious. With Ray having defied Celia by letting April go before his death, and with the full weight of both their criminal enterprises now potentially unraveling, Joe's own role in setting Moira up could come dangerously close to the surface. He manipulated the situation. He blackmailed people. He pointed the police in Moira's direction while knowing full well she was innocent. If tonight's evidence opens the door to Moira's exoneration, it may also open a door that Joe Tate cannot close fast enough. Looking ahead, The Emmerdale spoiler landscape is full of promise for those who have been championing Moira's cause. The war between the Dingles and the Tates is far from over. If anything, tonight feels like the moment it truly begins in earnest. Moira Dingle is not a woman who forgives easily, and she is certainly not a woman who forgets. Every humiliation, every injustice, every night she has spent in that cell, all of it is fuel. The coming weeks could see the investigation into Celia's crimes properly reopened, with fresh scrutiny placed on the evidence that was used to charge Moira. There are those in the village who know more than they've said, and as the pressure builds, the chances of that silence holding are diminishing fast. Robert's conscience is already a ticking clock. Caleb and Ruby carry their own weight from reporting those bodies. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, the truth about what really happened at Butler's farm is fighting its way to the surface. To bring it all together, tonight's Emmerdale is one of those episodes that feels like a pivot point. Everything that has been built across months of extraordinary storytelling. The exploitation ring, Celia's masterful villainy, the unjust imprisonment of one of the show's most beloved characters, the Dingle family being brought to its knees. All of it has been pointing towards a moment of reckoning. And on Friday the 3rd of April 2026, that moment appears to be arriving. Celia Daniels may be gone, but the echoes of her crimes are still reverberating through the village. And tonight, just perhaps, those echoes finally start to tell the truth. So what do you think about this extraordinary Emmerdale development? Do you believe Moira will finally get the justice she deserves? And who do you think will be the one to ultimately bring the full truth to light? Robert, Kim, Caleb, or someone else entirely? Drop your thoughts and your theories in the comments below. We absolutely love hearing from you, and this storyline has produced some of the best fan debate we've seen in a long time. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. It genuinely makes a huge difference to this channel. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Emmerdale Echoes so you never miss a breakdown, a spoiler, or a moment of drama from the Dales. We are here for every twist, every revelation, and every jaw-dropping Friday episode that Emmerdale throws at us. Until next time, stay with us because in Emmerdale the story is never over.